A modern-day police officer wakes up to a pungent stench, groggily assuming his dog has had an accident. But when he opens his eyes, he's greeted not by his pet, but by a vision of a dog's rear end, and the reality of his situation crashes down on him. He lurches awake, not in his own bed, but in a grimy cell bound by chains. His last memory is of celebrating a promotion with his colleagues, drinking until he passed out. But now a flood of new memories assaults his mind, the memories of a young man named Zhu Kaiyan. He learns that this man's father died in battle and his mother from illness, leaving him to be raised by his second uncle. He has been reborn, or transmigrated, into an ancient, feudal world, and ironically, he's still a lawman. Or at least he was. The memories reveal a tragic story. Zhu Kaiyan's uncle, Zhu Pingjai, was an imperial swordsman tasked with escorting 150,000 taels of taxed silver. But on the way, the silver vanished. The emperor, enraged by the loss, delivered a swift and brutal judgment. Zhu Pingjai was to be beheaded, the men of the family exiled to the border, and the women sent to a female prison. As the nephew of the condemned, Zhu Kaiyan was stripped of his position and thrown into this very cell to await his exile. With only 2 days left before his fate is sealed, he realizes he's been dropped into the game of life on the hardest difficulty. Exile to the border is a death sentence. The climate is harsh, and few survive a decade. Many don't even survive the journey. In a panic, he calls out for a system, a cheat code common in the transmigration novels he's read, but only silence answers. He is utterly alone, and the terror is overwhelming. Escape is impossible, and with his family's reputation in ruins, no one would dare to help them. Just as despair sets in, a sliver of hope emerges. He recalls the laws of this land, the Daifeng dynasty, which state that great deeds can pardon great crimes. His only path to survival is to solve the case himself and recover the lost silver. His thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of a visitor. The guard grants them a brief meeting. It is his cousin, Zhu Xinian, a scholar from the prestigious Yunlu Academy. Xinian informs him that he's bribed the escort soldiers with the last of the family's money to ensure Zhu Kaiyan is treated well on the journey to the border. He also reveals his own fate. He has been expelled from the academy, but his teacher's protection has saved him from exile. With a cold, detached tone, he advises Zhu Kaiyan to accept his fate and leaves. But Zhu Kaiyan sees the truth behind his cousin's stoic facade. Being expelled has shattered Xinian's future, leaving him a disgraced scholar in the capital. The family's downfall has ruined them all. Driven by desperation, Zhu Kaiyan lunges at the bars, yelling for his cousin to wait. He begs Xinian to get him the case file for the lost silver. Sensing his cousin's suspicion, Zhu Kaiyan quickly concocts a lie, claiming he only wants to know the truth so he can die in peace. Moved by his plea, or perhaps by his own despair, Xinian agrees, saying he has already seen the file and will write it down from memory. As Xinian departs, Zhu Kaiyan reflects on the monumental task ahead. Without modern forensics, the case file is his only hope. Soon, Xinian returns with a scroll. He passes it through the bars, offers a quiet "take care of yourself," and disappears into the night. Zhu Kaiyan eagerly unfurls the scroll, immensely relieved that his new body is literate. The report is chillingly simple. 3 days ago, a strange, demonic wind caused the horses to panic and plunge the silver cart into the river. Moments later, a massive explosion rocked the water, and the rest of the silver was gone. Meanwhile, at the Jingzhou mansion, the officials in charge of the case are at a dead end. Governor Chen Hangguang, watchman Lai Yunchun, and a young prodigy from the Skynet organization, Chu Keiwei, are feeling the pressure from the emperor. They too have only 2 days left. Governor Chen reports that Zhu Pingjai swears his innocence, a claim that Chu Keiwei verifies with her Kai observation skill, confirming he isn't lying. Their investigation has hit a wall. They suspect demonic involvement, but a thorough search of the river revealed no trace of demonic energy. The governor fumes, frustrated by the lack of any leads. The officials discuss the history of demons, who were nearly wiped out 500 years prior during a great war. It is Chu Keiwei who finds the first real flaw in the demon theory. While munching on a bun, she points out that demons crave human flesh, not money. The simple logic stumps the veteran officials. She elaborates, even if demons needed money, there are far easier targets than a heavily guarded tax shipment. This implies a deeper plot. Lai Yunchun agrees, adding that the escort's route was chosen at the last minute, meaning the ambush was orchestrated by someone with inside information, a spy. Back in his cell, Zhu Kaiyan pores over the same facts. He identifies the two most obvious clues that have everyone else stumped: the demonic wind and the explosion. But he knows from his police training that focusing only on the spectacular is a rookie mistake. He decides to ignore the supernatural elements and analyze the case as a meticulously planned, man-made crime. Suddenly, it all clicks into place. A wild grin spreads across his face as he begins to laugh, the sound echoing through the prison. He shouts for the guards, proclaiming he has important leads for the magistrate. Word quickly reaches the governor, who, though annoyed by the prisoner's audacity, orders him to be brought in. Chained and barefoot, Zhu Kaiyan is escorted into the main hall. He quickly assesses the three powerful figures before him: the governor, the watchman, and the beautiful Skynet disciple. The governor immediately confronts him, demanding to know why he withheld information. Zhu Kaiyan coolly explains that he only just solved the puzzle using the case file his cousin brought him. Then he makes his stunning claim: the silver wasn't stolen by demons, but by men. The governor explodes in anger, ordering Zhu Kaiyan to be given 200 baton strikes for his nonsensical claims. But the watchman, Lai Yunchun, holds up a hand, his interest piqued. He allows Zhu Kaiyan to speak. Zhu Kaiyan begins his deduction by highlighting the critical flaw that everyone missed: the timeline. According to the guard's testimony, the escort entered the city at 5:20 a.m., and the incident on Guangnan Street occurred at 7:10 a.m. He argues that the demonic wind and the explosion were nothing but a grand diversion. He then fires off a series of questions: the weight of 150,000 taels of silver, the 30-mile distance from the city gate to the street, and the 4 busy intersections along the way. Lai Yunchun's eyes widen. The pieces fall into place. It's impossible. A cart laden with over 5,000 kilograms of silver could never have covered that distance through a bustling city in less than 2 hours. The time doesn't add up. The governor remains unconvinced, pointing to the numerous eyewitnesses who saw the silver fall into the river. Zhu Kaiyan calmly replies that seeing is not always believing, and asks for brush and paper to prove his theory. He scribbles down a list of seemingly random items. The governor reads the list with contempt, disgusted by both the strange request and the prisoner's terrible handwriting. But he reluctantly orders his men to fetch the items. As they wait, Zhu Kaiyan makes his final request. If his peasant knowledge can solve this case, he asks for a full pardon for the Zhu family. The governor strokes his beard and nods. The law of Daifeng is clear. Great merit can indeed pardon great crimes. With the items assembled, Zhu Kaiyan's plan shifts into high gear. He announces his intention to recreate the explosion, drawing upon his modern-day knowledge of chemistry to extract pure sodium. He begins by dissolving salt in water, then carefully heating the mixture over a candle to evaporate the liquid and precipitate the sodium chloride crystals. The officials watch, utterly perplexed. Zhu Kaiyan explains that the next steps, electrolysis and melting the salt, are impossible with ancient technology. But this world has a cheat code: cultivators. He turns to Chu Keiwei, correctly identifying her as a disciple of Skynet. She confirms she is a 6th-grade alchemist and the direct disciple of Skynet's leader. He asks for her help, and though she states fire control is beyond her current level, she reveals a powerful magical instrument given to her by her master. With a surge of energy, she summons a controlled flame from the instrument, melting the salt crystals in the porcelain cup. Next, following Zhu Kaiyan's precise instructions, she channels electricity from the device into the molten salt. It's a delicate process, and after a tense moment where he shouts for her to stop, the experiment is a success. A small, silvery cube of pure sodium rests in the bowl. He presents the cube to the stunned officials. They note its striking resemblance to silver, but also its uncanny lightness. The governor, however, remains unconvinced about the explosion. To demonstrate, Zhu Kaiyan takes the sodium and drops it into a bowl of water. The reaction is immediate and violent. A miniature explosion erupts from the bowl, shocking everyone in the room. The truth is finally revealed. The mastermind had replaced the real silver with this volatile substance. The demonic wind was merely a trigger to send the cart into the river, where the fake silver would detonate, creating a perfect diversion and framing the demon clan for the crime. Zhu Kaiyan adds that the few real silver coins recovered by the soldiers were likely just a thin layer on top of the chests to pass a cursory inspection. Lai Yunchun, the watchman, is thoroughly impressed. He grabs Zhu Kaiyan by the shoulders, his face breaking into a rare, manic grin as he praises the young man for connecting all the dots. With the how solved, the officials turn to the where. The silver came from the imperial treasury and was swapped somewhere en route to the escort. The only logical conclusion is that it was switched out recently, just before the journey began, pointing to a conspiracy deep within the capital. Galvanized into action, the governor barks orders for his sedan and rushes out to pursue this new lead. As he leaves, Zhu Kaiyan frantically reminds him of his promise to pardon the Zhu family. Left alone with Chu Keiwei and Lai Yunshun, Zhu Kaiyan sees an opportunity. He tries to convince the young alchemist to take him as a disciple, hoping to secure a powerful ally in Skynet. To prove his worth, he begins reciting what he calls an ancient alchemy text, which is actually the periodic table. The string of nonsensical words leaves Chu Keiwei utterly bewildered. Annoyed, she declares he's messing with her and storms out, but not before revealing a peculiar requirement for joining Skynet. All disciples must be virgins. As a guard leads him away, Zhu Kaiyan desperately yells after her that he qualifies. 2 days later, the 5-day deadline arrives. Guards march into the prison to collect Zhu Pingjai for his execution. His family is brought for a final, tearful farewell. With a heavy heart, Zhu Pingjai accepts his fate, proclaiming his loyalty to the country and his love for his family. But just as the guards are about to take him, an official rushes in. He presents Zhu Pingjai with his old uniform, announcing that the case has been solved, the silver recovered, and the Zhu family has been pardoned by the emperor. The family is overcome with relief and confusion. They assume their brilliant scholar son, Xinian, must have used his connections to save them. The official corrects them, explaining it was their nephew, Zhu Kaiyan, who single-handedly solved the case. The news is so shocking that Zhu Kaiyan's aunt, who had always looked down on him, faints on the spot. Zhu Kaiyan waits anxiously at the mansion's back door until his family emerges, finally free. He waves and his uncle rushes toward him. Instead of a hug, Zhu Pingjai delivers a resounding slap, followed by a hearty laugh. A gruff but heartfelt show of gratitude. It's there that Zhu Kaiyan properly meets his cousins for the first time, the elegant Zhu Lingyu and the adorable, snack-loving Zhu Lingyan. His aunt Lai Ru, who had once thrown him out of her house, offers a stilted but sincere thank you. As the reunited family heads home, another drama unfolds in the inner court of the Zhu mansion. Unaware of the pardon, a despairing Zhu Xinian, his future as a scholar ruined, stands on a stool with a noose around his neck. Convinced that all is lost, he kicks the stool away just as his family arrives. They see him hanging and rush to his side, cutting him down just in time. He collapses, weeping with the realization that his grand, tragic gesture was utterly pointless. Back in his own yard, Zhu Kaiyan reflects on his new reality. This world is far more complex than he imagined, with various cultivation systems. Warriors, magicians, Confucians, Buddhists, and more. His knowledge is scant. He knows the warrior path, which is considered the weakest, only up to the 7th grade, the level just above his uncle. Of the magician system, he only knows the lower ranks, thanks to his encounter with Chu Keiwei. As he soaks in a tub, he ponders the life he left behind. A quiet existence as a police officer turned businessman. His death was mundane, a simple case of alcohol poisoning after a night out with friends. He grimly realizes that not only is he stuck in this feudal society, but his parents will now discover the embarrassing contents of his computer's hard drive. His thoughts are interrupted by a knock. A young maid named Lu informs him that his aunt and uncle have summoned him for dinner. On the way, she quietly tells him that his aunt and uncle were arguing. His aunt, suspicious of how easily the case was solved, had been grilling his uncle for details. Zhu Kaiyan understands. He had given his uncle a simplified version of events on the way home, but his aunt's persistent nature was a problem. The family dinner is thick with tension. His cousin Xinian is a portrait of social death, still mortified by his failed suicide attempt. The awkward silence is shattered when the youngest cousin, Lingyan, begins to wail. She complains that her mother had promised to take her to the famous Giyu Tower if they got some money. The restaurant is notoriously exclusive and expensive, far beyond their means. Seeing an opportunity, Zhu Kaiyan uses the girl's tantrum to his advantage. He knows Lingyan is his aunt's greatest weakness. He encourages the child, fanning the flames of her outburst and successfully diverting his aunt's attention from the tax silver case. The table descends into chaos as Lingyan clings to him, demanding he take her there. With the immediate crisis averted, his other cousin, Lingyu, shyly asks how he managed to solve the case with just the file. Zhu Kaiyan explains the core of his deduction, the impossible timeline and the illogical weight of the silver cart. clues that pointed to a premeditated plot rather than a random demon attack. His uncle, Zhu Pingjai, listens with growing shame. He confesses that he had been drinking with a subordinate that morning and hadn't paid close attention to the details. A lapse in judgment that nearly doomed them all. Overcome with guilt, he recalls the battle of mountains and seas, where Zhu Kaiyan's father died taking a sword meant for him, and how he had promised to protect his son. The heavy atmosphere is broken once more by Lingyan, who, having been dragged away earlier, returns to recount her time in the dark house. She cheerfully describes catching a cockroach, and when her mother's stomach growled from hunger, she fed it to her. The gruesome tale causes her aunt to turn green and nearly vomit a rainbow, bringing the summer dinner to an abrupt end. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, the Emperor's alchemists are in a panic. Fascinated by the magical fake silver, the Emperor has ordered them to replicate the formula, and they have been failing for 2 days straight. Their salvation arrives in the form of Chu Keiwei. They crowd around her, begging her to share the secret. Having failed to recreate it herself, she decides to simply pass on the ancient formula Zhu Kaiyan gave her. She stands before the eager alchemists and recites the periodic table mnemonic. Though none of them understand a word, they are awestruck by its profound and mystical sound. They hail her as a genius. When they press her for the source of this wisdom, she admits it came from Zhu Kaiyan, a mere martial artist. The alchemists scoff. In the rigid hierarchy of cultivators, warriors are at the very bottom, looked down upon by every other discipline. Fleeing the ensuing chaos, Keiwei finds her master atop the observatory. She asks him if he knows who was behind the fake silver. The wise old man gazes at the stars and confirms that he does. It was the director of their very own astronomical bureau. Back in the mundane world, Zhu Kaiyan reports for duty at the Changle County government office, much to the shock of his colleagues, who thought he was exiled or dead. After deflecting their invitations to celebrate at the local brothel, he and his boss, head constable Wang, are summoned by the magistrate. They learn of a new crisis. An influential merchant with connections to a high-ranking official has been murdered. The pressure is immense, as the triennial metropolitan inspections are approaching, a period of intense scrutiny for all officials. With no leads, the frustrated head constable decides to resort to fishing, framing a few local gangsters to close the case quickly. But Zhu Kaiyan, his modern sense of justice flaring, refuses to stand by. He slams his hand on the table, declaring they can't let the real murderer get away with it. He snatches the case file from his superior's hands, determined to find the truth. With the new case file in hand, Zhu Kaiyan begins his analysis. The victim was Zhang Yorui, a wealthy 51-year-old landowner married to a woman 20 years his junior, with an adult son from a previous marriage. 4 days ago, Zhang returned home unexpectedly from collecting rent and was found dead in his courtyard. His wife claimed she heard a scream and saw a shadowy figure escaping over the wall. The initial investigation revealed inconsistencies. Though the victim had just collected rent, no money was stolen. Zhu Kaiyan immediately recognizes this as a red flag. A real thief would have waited for the bulky coins to be exchanged for easily portable banknotes. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. He drills his boss, head constable Wang, on the details. He points out the first major flaw, the footprints. The file mentioned muddy footprints left by the thief on top of the wall as he fled, but no tracks leading into the courtyard. An intruder skilled enough to leap over the wall without leaving a trace in the flower bed below wouldn't need to push off the wall to escape. The footprints were a deliberate plant. Next, the weapon. The victim was killed by a single powerful blow to the back of the head with a blunt object. Zhu Kaiyan questions why a killer would use a clumsy, random object instead of a more efficient knife or sword, especially when the goal was a quick kill. The only logical reason is that the killer was unarmed at the moment of the attack. Finally, he reveals the most damning piece of evidence. During interrogation, the wife, Zhang Yongxi, fainted and was discovered to be pregnant. After 10 years of a childless marriage to an elderly man, the timing was incredibly suspicious. Zhu Kaiyan lays out his shocking conclusion. The child isn't her husband's. This wasn't a burglary at all, but a crime of passion. The wife was having an affair, and the two suspects were either an outsider or her own stepson. He explains his theory. The lovers were having a secret rendezvous when the husband returned home unexpectedly and caught them. In a fit of rage and panic, one of them grabbed the nearest heavy object and killed him. They then dragged the body into the courtyard and staged the scene to look like a burglary. He singles out the son, Zhang Ziyan, as the prime suspect. His alibi of hearing nothing is flimsy, and the intentionally placed footprints point to an inside job. In the main hall, the magistrate begins his interrogation of the wife and stepson, following the script fed to him by his underlings, who were coached by Zhu Kaiyan. He questions Zhang Ziyan's alibi and confronts the wife about her pregnancy. When he brings up the untouched flower bed, the suspects begin to panic. Zhang Ziyan, however, plays his trump card, threatening the magistrate with his powerful uncle in the Ministry of Justice. The spineless magistrate begins to sweat, but before he can fold, Zhu Kaiyan sends word for him to adjourn the court. Zhu Kaiyan enters the interrogation room to speak with the wife alone. He pours her tea and feigns sympathy, acknowledging that her elderly husband was likely neglectful and frequented brothels. Lulling her into a false sense of security, he suddenly drops the bombshell. Her lover, Zhang Ziyan, has confessed to everything. He methodically lists the holes in their story: the staged footprints, the illogical murder weapon, and the position of the body, which indicated an attack from behind by a familiar person. The final lie seals her fate. Zhu Kaiyan claims that Zhang Ziyan not only confessed, but tried to bribe the magistrate and pin the entire murder on her. Knowing her lover's selfish nature, she believes him instantly. Zhu Kaiyan offers a false promise of a spared life in exchange for a full confession. The lie works. With both confessions in hand, the case is closed. The magistrate, overjoyed, profusely thanks Zhu Kaiyan for his skill. As a reward, Head Constable Wang offers to take Zhu Kaiyan to a brothel. Zhu Kaiyan solemnly refuses, explaining that he must preserve his virginity to advance in his cultivation. This sparks a conversation among the men about the city's nightlife and the legendary courtesan, Miss Fuxiang, whose company costs a staggering 30 taels of silver. Back in his own residence, Zhu Kaiyan decides to keep a journal to track his new life. He plans to resign from his post and use his modern knowledge to get rich, aiming for a comfortable middle-class life away from political strife. His get-rich-quick schemes, from making advanced paper to glass, all fail when he discovers they already exist in this surprisingly advanced world. His days become a cycle of working, borrowing money from his tsundere cousin, and visiting the brothel strictly to listen to music, much to his own frustration. His final scheme, to write down classic novels from his world, also collapses when he realizes he can't remember the details well enough, ending the chapter on a note of pure comedic despair. The days turn into a month. Zhu Kaiyan settles into his new life, chronicling his experiences in a journal. He's frustrated by his inability to turn his modern knowledge into wealth, and is dismayed by the rampant corruption in this feudal society. He also pines for the arrival of Chu Keiwei from the Astronomical Bureau, hoping she'll bring news or perhaps just some companionship. He even tries to entertain his young cousins by recounting the tragic love story of Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai, but the tale only moves the older Lingyu to tears. The ever-hungry Lingyan simply demands more buns. Strange things begin to happen. He finds himself hitting the bullseye every time he throws a dart, and stumbles upon silver coins on the street with uncanny regularity. The amount he's found, 1 or 2 taels, is enough to support an average family for 3 months. He suspects a system is at play, the same kind of cheat power he'd called for in prison, but his pleas for it to reveal itself go unanswered. He realizes this incredible luck is a new development. The original owner of his body certainly never had it. On his day off, he decides to save money by having breakfast at his uncle's house, much to his aunt's annoyance. He proceeds to playfully trick his youngest cousin, Lingyan, out of her steamed buns, easily confusing the simple-minded girl with some creative math. After breakfast, his cousin Xinian finally emerges from his room. Zhu Kaiyan, munching on a stolen bun, asks him about his Confucian cultivation. Xinian explains that the prestigious Yunlu Academy is one of the only places in the world where one can learn Confucianism and Taoism. His own cultivation level, the 9th rank, Aperture Opening Realm, enhances his memory and learning ability. To advance, he must study and internalize the classics, a process that requires immense comprehension, something he struggles with. Their conversation is interrupted by family matters. Xinian must compose a farewell poem for a renowned scholar from his academy, Elder Ziyang, who is leaving to take up a new post. It's a high-stakes social event. Impressing the elder could pave the way for a bright future. His aunt and uncle begin to bicker about Xinian's lack of poetic talent, a trait he inherited from his grandfather. Seeing his cousin's distress, Zhu Kaiyan decides to step in and help. He begins to recite a famous farewell poem from his own world's Tang dynasty. The opening lines are so powerful they immediately silence the table. Xinyan is stunned by the poem's depth and imagery. Don't worry about not having friends ahead, Zhu Kaiyan concludes with a flourish. For everyone under heaven knows you. The poem is hailed as a masterpiece. Later, while sparring with his uncle, Zhu Kaiyan learns more about the warrior cultivation path. To advance from his current essence refining realm to the Kai refining realm, he needs the help of a 7th rank master to open his heavenly gate. This can be achieved through military merit or by paying an exorbitant sum of money on the black market. The court strictly controls the number of high-level cultivators, but with the government's weakening authority, a thriving underground has emerged. This reinforces Zhu Kaiyan's primary goal: make money and a lot of it. The day of the farewell ceremony arrives. Zhu Kaiyan decides to take his cousins out for a walk and conveniently ends up at the Minyang Pavilion, where the students of Yunlu Academy have gathered to see off Elder Ziyang. Xinyan, clutching the poem Zhu Kaiyan gave him, is a nervous wreck. As other students present their mediocre poems, the elder and his colleagues grow weary, lamenting the decline of poetry in their time. Just as a rival student is about to claim victory with his own poem, Zhu Kaiyan gives his cousin a shove. Xinyan stumbles forward, and with no other choice, presents his farewell poem. The crowd is initially skeptical, as Xinyan's reputation for poor poetry is well known. But as he recites the lines, a hush falls over the pavilion. The 2 lines about the harsh northern winds and swirling snow perfectly capture the elder's journey and future struggles. The final lines, promising eternal fame, bring tears to the elder's eyes. The poem is declared peerless. The crowd erupts, stunned that such a masterpiece could be half finished. But the elder is ecstatic, declaring that even half a poem is enough to amaze the world. He grandly provides a title for the work and bestows the grand prize, his personal jade pendant, upon Xinyan. The other scholars are left seething with jealousy, as Ziyang praises his new favorite student. When the elders ask who wrote the masterpiece, Xinyan, flustered, admits it was his brother, to save his proud scholar cousin from the embarrassment of being related to a lowly constable. He quickly fabricates a story about a reclusive, genius brother who studies the classics at home. The students, completely buying the tale, hail this mysterious brother as a role model for their generation. As the elder departs, his colleagues, 2 powerful figures in their own right, decide they must meet this hidden talent. They corner the terrified Xinyan, insisting he introduce them to his brother, hoping to take on such a brilliant apprentice themselves. On the bustling streets, young Lingyan's eyes were fixed on the sweet, glistening candied halls. But her older sister Lingyu explained they had no money after a recent family disaster. After being turned down by his sisters, Zhu Kaiyan also claimed to be broke, but then paused, a strange look on his face. He mysteriously declared that the money would be there soon, and with a tap of his foot, a piece of silver magically appeared on the ground, stunning his young cousins. Zhu Kaiyan himself was bewildered by this recurring luck, noting that the silver was the exact amount he'd need for a night of drinking and entertainment. Shaking off his confusion, he decided he would figure out the source of his good fortune later, and for now, he would treat his family. He bought 3 skewers of the candied fruit, handing them out to the delighted girls. Lingyu thanked him with a bashful smile, which caught Zhu Kaiyan off guard with its simple beauty. Little Lingyan, however, had already devoured her treat, and was now eyeing her brother's skewer. Seeing her game, Zhu Kaiyan leaned in with a menacing grin, warning her that eating too many sweets would cause fat, greasy worms to grow in her mouth. To his shock, the food-obsessed girl wasn't scared at all. She imagined the worms as delicious snacks. Admitting defeat, Zhu Kaiyan handed over his own candied haw, which she happily accepted. Their walk then took them past the Giyu Tower, a 3rd-class brothel where beautiful women called out to potential customers from the balconies. Zhu Kaiyan wistfully considered his entire life savings, a few paltry copper coins, and declared himself unworthy of entering such an establishment. When Lingyan asked what business the ladies conducted, he cheekily told her they sold clams. Taking him literally, the little girl immediately demanded they go upstairs for a tasty snack, much to her older sister's horror. To avoid further embarrassment, Zhu Kaiyan quickly pointed out a fishbowl stall and ran off to buy them a different treat. He returned moments later with a bag full of steaming fishbowls, but his triumphant smile vanished as he saw what was happening in his absence. A group of thugs had cornered Lingyu, their leering young master watching from horseback. Lingyan stood defiantly before them, calling them bullies and demanding they leave her sister alone. Annoyed by the interruption, the young master callously whipped his horse, causing it to rear up and prepare to trample the little girl. As Lingyu screamed in terror, Zhu Qian sprang into action, flicking a handful of copper coins through the air with deadly force. The coins struck the horse, which collapsed in a bloody heap, its rider thrown to the ground. Chaos erupted as the thugs rushed to their master's side. Lingyan stood frozen, her face splattered with blood. Zhu Qian immediately rushed to her side, gently taking her hand and pulling her into a protective embrace, assuring her that he was there. As Lingyu ran to them, the enraged young master screamed about his dead horse. Thinking fast, Zhu Qian instructed Lingyu to take Lingyan to the Changle County Gate and beat the drum to report the crime. He also told her to have the head constable send for his second uncle, a captain in the Imperial Guard, before turning to face the furious young master and his men. The master accused Zhu Qian of killing his prized horse, and Zhu Qian calmly admitted it. With ice in his eyes, he then added that he was going to kill him next. The horse, a rare snow-footed dark bay piebald, was the ancient world's equivalent of a Lamborghini, meaning its owner was undoubtedly the child of a high-ranking official. Understanding the unspoken rules of the capital, Zhu Qian decided to bluff, introducing himself as the son of a centurion of the Imperial Blade Guards. He offered a false apology, but the young master recognized his family name as belonging to an officer who had recently lost a shipment of taxed silver. Seeing Zhu Qian as an easy target, he ordered his men to cripple him. Two of the master's guards rushed forward with blades drawn, but Zhu Qian easily dodged their strikes. He was caught off guard, however, when a third attacker joined the fray from above, their combined assault managing to land a shallow cut across his chest. Pushed back, Zhu Qian assessed the situation. Though individually weaker, their teamwork was proving effective. The young master mocked him, demanding he kneel and call him Grandpa to be spared. Zhu Qian smirked and called him Grandpa, but then immediately followed it with a vulgar insult about his great-grandmother. Enraged, the master ordered his men to kill him on the spot. Done playing, Zhu Qian declared it was his turn. He unleashed his true power, moving with blinding speed and shattering one guard's ribcage with a single glowing punch. Before the others could react, he lunged past them and grabbed the young master by the throat. With a furious cry, he slammed his fist into the master's stomach, declaring he had no right to bully his little sister. He then unleashed a merciless barrage of punches to the man's face, beating him unconscious. Pinning the master to the ground, Zhu Qian warned the terrified guards that if they moved, their master would die. He then stepped on the young master's face, vowing to teach him a lesson about messing with the wrong person. Just then, city constables arrived, and seeing the street brawl, ordered everyone arrested. At the magistrate's office, the young master, now identified as young Master Zhu, demanded Zhu Qian's execution. When the magistrate hesitated, Zhu lunged at Zhu Qian, who promptly punched him in the face again. An official revealed the shocking truth. Zhu was the son of the Vice Minister of Revenue, a position of immense power. Zhu Qian's heart sank. He knew his uncle, a mere centurion, was nothing compared to a vice minister. He had picked a fight with someone far beyond his station. The magistrate, Zhu, attempted to use the law, presenting a formal petition from Lingyu accusing Zhu of his crimes. However, Zhu simply denied the charges, and the powerless magistrate was forced to retract the complaint. Realizing official channels were useless, Zhu Qian knew he needed a new plan. He pulled aside a friendly guard, borrowed a tale of silver, and gave him urgent instructions. The guard was to ride Zhu Qian's horse to his home, retrieve a specific blue paper book from his cabinet, and take it to the astronomical observatory. There, he was to find a girl named Kei and deliver a desperate message. Zhu Qian was in danger and needed her help immediately. Zhu Qian urgently pleads with a colleague, offering his entire next month's salary as a bribe to deliver a crucial message to the astronomical observatory immediately. Before he can make his escape, a terrifying pressure fills the room as Uncle Chen, a powerful expert from the Zhu family, launches a lethal ambush. Zhu Qian is completely outmatched by the 7th rank soul refining master, who strikes with overwhelming force. Just as the situation turns fatal, officials from the Ministry of Justice storm the scene, interrupting the assassination attempt under the guise of law enforcement. The Zhu family servant immediately switches personas, playing the role of a humble, law-abiding elder while secretly plotting Zhu Qian's demise. Despite his uncle's desperate cries of innocence, Zhu Qian is shackled and dragged away by the officers, realizing that this arrest is a trap set by his enemies. Zhu's uncle, Zhu Pingjai, is frantic with worry, but realizes he lacks the rank to petition the emperor directly for help. He pins his hopes on his son, Sai-Jiu, a student at the prestigious Yunlu Academy who might have the connections to save them. Meanwhile, at the astronomical observatory, the alchemists are stuck in a cycle of failure until a guard delivers Zhu Qian's notebook. Song King, the alchemy fanatic, reads the strange concepts of equivalent exchange and chemical formulas. Realizing this, Zhu Qian possesses knowledge that could change the world. Overcome with excitement, he rallies the entire department to rush to the aid of this newfound genius. Far outside the city, Zhu Xinian receives word of his brother's arrest and begs his mentors for assistance. The senior scholars of Yunlu Academy demonstrate the terrifying power of Confucianism, using their words to warp reality and command their horse to travel at impossible speeds. Not to be outdone, another master commands the carriage itself to fly with the wind, turning their transport into a high-speed aerial vehicle. Back in the dark cells of the Ministry of Justice, Zhu Qian comes to a grim realization that without personal power, he will always be vulnerable to the whims of the elite. Outside, the ministry is thrown into chaos as the scholars of Yunlu Academy arrive and practically demolish the front gate with their presence. The situation escalates further when the warlocks from the astronomical observatory also descend upon the ministry, creating a standoff between two massive powers. The Minister of Justice is left bewildered, wondering who this Zhu Qian is to warrant such a high-profile rescue mission. Unaware of the commotion outside, a corrupt official tries to force Zhu Qian to sign a fabricated confession admitting to murder. Young Master Zhu and the terrifying Uncle Chen enter the interrogation room, gleefully offering Zhu Qian a choice between exile or torture. Zhu Qian tries to stall, sweating nervously as he wonders why his backup hasn't arrived yet. Just as the villains prepare to execute their threats, a guard bursts in with a panic-stricken order from the minister to release the prisoner immediately. Zhu Qian's eyes light up with relief and triumph as he realizes his allies have finally breached the prison. With his freedom secured, Zhu Qian sighed in relief in the courtyard of the Ministry of Justice, grateful to have escaped torture. He turned to the assembled officials and alchemists, confidently announcing that he was a new disciple of the supervisor, a declaration that left them utterly stunned. However, he then recalled Zhu Qian's extraordinary alchemical talent in refining fake silver. Realizing this could be the very reason the supervisor made an exception and took him as a disciple. However, he then recalled Zhu Qian's extraordinary alchemical talent in refining fake silver. Realizing this could be the very reason the supervisor made an exception and took him as a disciple. Meanwhile, Zhu Qian scanned the crowd of white-robed alchemists from the astronomical observatory, pleased that his alchemy secret manual had successfully summoned them to his rescue. Approaching them, he politely greeted them as senior brothers, much to their confusion. When one of them demanded to know if he wrote the book, Zhu Qian readily confirmed it. The officials from the Ministry of Justice watched in disbelief as the scene unfolded. Their leader, Master Sun, admitted that not only had the alchemists come for Zhu Qian, but two other powerful figures had also arrived to demand his immediate release. Just then, two venerable scholars approached. One of them, Master Zhang, quoted a line of poetry and asked Zhu Qian if he was the author. Zhu Qian humbly confirmed it was his work, introducing himself by his courtesy name, Ningyan. But Zhu Qian wasn't finished. He stopped and declared he had one more thing to deal with. But Zhu Qian wasn't finished. He stopped and declared he had one more thing to deal with. He strode menacingly toward the subordinate official who had arrested him, ignoring the man's panicked cries for Master Sun to seize him. With the man's superior looking on impassively, Zhu Qian grabbed the heavy shackles. He then proceeded to brutally smash the metal restraints into the official's face again and again, leaving him a bloody mess on the ground. The beaten man cried out for his uncle to save him. The man's uncle, an elderly official, stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. He dared Zhu Qian to kill him right there, in front of the esteemed scholars and his fellow disciples. Instead of being intimidated, Zhu Qian taunted him, challenging him to act. Faced with such brazen defiance, the uncle's courage failed him, and he could only take a fearful step back. Zhu Qian smirked, noting to himself that it takes someone with powerful backing to put another in their place. With his point made, Zhu Qian rejoined his rescuers, and they left the ministry. Outside, his cousins were waiting anxiously. Upon seeing them, Zhu Qian rushed to his second uncle, putting on a tearful display about how frightened he had been. His other cousin, Sai-Jiu, was approached by the scholars, who were already trying to recruit the talented poet Zhu Qian to their academy. Sai Jiu cryptically told his brother to simply watch the play unfold. The two scholars then began bickering over who would get Zhu Qian as a student. Much to his confusion, Zhu Qian graciously thanked the scholars for their offer, promising that if he joined their academy, he would surely surpass everyone, including Sai Jiu. His cousin explained that it was his poetry, specifically the line about everyone under heaven knowing him, that had captured their interest. Zhu Qian was inwardly disappointed, realizing they valued his potential for fame more than his character, and mentally labeled them a pair of scheming old geezers. He politely deferred their invitation, promising to visit their academy once his affairs were settled. As a final hook, he mentioned he had composed several more fine poems recently, which sent the scholars into a state of ecstatic anticipation. One of the scholars, Sai Jiu's teacher, then abruptly turned on his own student, scolding him for his slow cultivation and assigning him a punishment of copying texts 300 times. With that, the teacher took a single, impossible step, vanishing into the distance. Zhu Qian was astounded by the display of power. The second scholar, not wanting to be outdone, proudly declared that his proper place was at the gates before disappearing in a swirl of energy himself. Zhu Qian asked what realm of power these Confucian scholars possessed. Sai Jiu explained it was the realm of virtues, an ability that allowed them to manipulate reality with their words. As they walked, Zhu Qian made a strange and vulgar request of his brother, causing the young man to spit up blood in sheer indignation. Soon after, the group arrived at the magnificent astronomical observatory tower. One of the alchemists, Song King, was impressed by Zhu Qian's calm demeanor, which Zhu Qian attributed to his natural talent rather than his past life experience with skyscrapers. Inside, he found Miss Keiwei devouring a massive feast. He sat down with her, cheekily noting that her voracious appetite reminded him of his little cousin. She changed the subject, revealing the true mastermind behind the tax silver case, the Vice Minister of Revenue, Zhu Xianping. The name hit Zhu Qian like a thunderbolt. He finally understood why the Vice Minister's son had been so determined to kill him. He had single-handedly ruined the man's father's grand scheme. He quickly pieced together the entire plot. The son must have deliberately sought him out near his home, using the harassment of a girl as a mere pretext to start a fatal conflict. He had been a target ever since he solved the case, and exposed that the transported goods were never silver at all. He marveled at the sheer luck that had saved him. If not for his brother needing a poem and his own whim to jot down chemistry notes, he would have been dead without ever knowing why. Convinced it was his destiny, he turned to Miss Keiwei and asked if she could read Kai. She confirmed it was a basic skill for a sorcerer, developed by being exposed to the Kai of life and death while healing others, which grants them clear eyes to see fate. Eagerly, he asked her to read his. Her eyes began to glow as she focused on him, and Zhu Qian felt a deeply uncomfortable sensation, as if his very soul was being scrutinized. She reported her findings. His Kai was a faint red mixed with black, indicating a low-ranking official plagued by misfortune. Unsatisfied, he asked if she saw any other colors, perhaps one symbolizing a son of destiny. The question horrified her. Such a title belonged only to the emperor, and his words bordered on treason. As he insisted she look again, he casually tried to steal food from her plate. She slapped his hand away, scolding him for eating half the food on the table. To distract her, he asked about the fate of the officials from the tax case. She informed him that the key conspirators had committed suicide, conveniently erasing all evidence. When he tried to pry for more information about court politics, she rebuffed him, stating the Bureau of Astronomy stays out of such matters. He then switched tactics, quizzing her on the cost of the meal and delighting in her inability to do the simple arithmetic. He found the food to be merely average, but she insisted it was the best in the city. Seizing the opportunity, he offered to cook for her sometime, an invitation she eagerly accepted. At the astronomical observatory, Song King and his fellow alchemists were once again attempting to refine silver, a process they had failed at countless times before. With his colleagues watching, he grimly noted that the next step was one they'd stumbled on in the past. An older alchemist observed quietly, commenting that the process had been silent so far, meaning every step had been correct. For the final step, Song King unleashed a powerful lightning strike technique. As he commanded everyone to hold their breath, a tense silence fell over the room. To everyone's astonishment, a perfectly refined piece of silver rested in the bowl, marking a clear success. His colleagues erupted in cheers, crowding around him and begging him to teach them his secret. Puzzled, Song King admitted he hadn't done anything different and turned to Zhu Ningyan, asking if he knew the reason for the success. Ningyan mused that the previous success of another alchemist, Miss Kwei, wasn't a coincidence, but was simply due to his own presence nearby. He deflected Song King's question, cheekily stating that a mature alchemist should learn to think independently and find the crux of the problem himself. As Song King pondered this, he had a sudden epiphany. He excitedly announced that he understood, declaring Zhu Ningyan an incredible alchemy genius. He explained to the others that the crucial difference wasn't in the steps, but in the sheer strength of the lightning strike he had used. Ningyan affirmed this, stating he had even named the phenomenon voltage. He then launched into a complex scientific explanation of electric potential difference, which left his audience completely bewildered. To simplify, he used an analogy, comparing electricity to water. While a cup of water is harmless, a waterfall could easily kill a person standing under it. The force is what matters. He declared that this phenomenon of electrical force was what he called voltage, a concept that finally clicked with the stunned alchemists. When asked if this was written in an alchemy book, Ningyan seized the opportunity. He claimed to be the only one who had studied a unique alchemy book filled with unheard-of techniques. With a grand gesture, he announced his decision to share these alchemy secrets with the astronomical observatory. However, he quickly added that it wouldn't be free, reminding them of the fundamental principle of alchemy, equivalent exchange. Meanwhile, at the Changle County government office, Zhu Ningyan's cousin, Lingyu, waited anxiously. The officials around her commented on what a delicate and charming young lady she was. Her brother's colleagues tried to comfort her, reassuring her that Ningyan would be fine and remarking on the good relationship he had with them. Lingyu was surprised to hear them speak of Ningyan with such respect. She hesitantly asked one of the officers, Officer Wang, if he could tell her more about her older brother. Officer Wang explained that for people in their line of work, it was normal to squeeze money out of rich businessmen. However, Zhu Ningyan was different. He never extorted or blackmailed anyone, regardless of their wealth. The officer recounted a time he took Ningyan on a job and gave him a share of the money, which Ningyan accepted with a smile. But later, Ningyan secretly returned the silver to its original owner, leaving it on their doorstep. Officer Wang concluded that while Ningyan wasn't always the most sensible, he was a smooth talker who was exceptionally good at making connections, which was why everyone felt so bad when something happened to him. Lingyu reflected on her past. She had always admired her second brother, a brilliant scholar who was the family's pride and future pillar. He had even passed the provincial exam, increasing her admiration further. But when their family was imprisoned during the tax silver case, it wasn't the scholar who saved them. It was her eldest brother, Ningyan, who created a path to life for the whole family in their moment of despair. The memory brought tears to her eyes. Suddenly, her father and second brother, Zhu Xinyan, arrived. They were soon followed by the county magistrate, who rushed in asking if Ningyan was truly okay. Xinyan explained that he had asked his teacher and a Mr. Mubai for help, and also mentioned the white-clothed members from the Bureau of Astronomy. The magistrate, assuming Xinyan's connections were responsible, was ecstatic, praising him for having such a bright future. Xinyan, however, corrected his misunderstanding. He clarified that Mr. Mubai had come because of his elder brother's connections, not his own. Furthermore, he admitted he didn't know the people from the Bureau of Astronomy either. His big brother had found them himself. The revelation left his family stunned, with Lingyu realizing her brother was far more mysterious than she ever imagined. Back at the observatory, Song King led Ningyan to his secret room. The room was filled with shelves of strange and unsettling objects. As they walked deeper inside, Ningyan noticed there were a lot of bizarre things. Suddenly, he recoiled in horror at a truly grotesque sight. Song King pointed to a large glass container, proudly explaining that the creature inside, a cat fused with a tree, was his great experiment. He elaborated that he was trying to fuse the two to give the cat the ability to regenerate its limbs. He claimed he was close to success, saying the creature could even regrow its head, but that he had ultimately failed. It had completely transformed into a tree, unable to move or think. When Song King asked for his opinion, Ningyan bluntly called him the devil. Seeing Song King's confusion, Ningyan softened his tone, suggesting that he was simply going in the wrong direction and that he had also thought about alchemy in this aspect. He introduced a new idea he called the hybridization technique. He proposed starting small by crossbreeding similar species, like two different breeds of cats, to create entirely new and potentially superior breeds. Song King was immediately captivated by the concept. Ningyan continued, stating his belief that living beings also fall within the realm of alchemy, an idea so radical that his own teacher had him confined for it. This shared experience of being misunderstood only made Song King admire Ningyan more, hailing him as a true supervisor. Ningyan then advised Song King to start with plants to prove his theories, mentioning an ancient alchemy text that aligned perfectly with his ideas. Song King was completely hooked, begging him to continue. Satisfied that his manipulation was complete, Song King gratefully offered to give Ningyan 3 gifts. Ningyan was pleased, thinking to himself that Song King was a straightforward person. The first gift was a powerful crossbow, its string made from the silk of rare and poisonous creatures. Song King explained its most valuable aspect. It was engraved with a formation. Ningyan, unfamiliar with the term, looked on in confusion. The formation amplified the crossbow's power, making it a threat even to soul-refining realm masters, though it could only be used 3 times before the formation dissipated. This reminded Ningyan of the canons of the great Feng dynasty, whose power came from both gunpowder and similar magical enhancements. Song King then explained that a rank 4 magician is called a formation master. These masters inscribe formations onto ordinary objects created by alchemists, turning them into powerful magic weapons. He described the intricate progression system, where different ranks of magicians and healers build upon each other's work. Specifically, the 6th rank alchemist and the 4th rank formation master complement each other, forging powerful weapons and refining them into magical artifacts. Elsewhere, a powerful, white-haired supervisor enjoyed a cup of wine, a testament to the high position such masters held. As Ningyan fantasized about using his newfound knowledge to win the heart of Chu Keiwei, he was presented with the next items. The second gift was the Heart Protector Mirror, a magical artifact capable of withstanding multiple full-power attacks from high-level martial artists. The final item was a vial of potent poison named Soul-Searing and Heart-Trenching, capable of killing a soul-refining expert with a single arrowhead. Ningyan was delighted with all 3 gifts. He then revealed his true plan to himself. The technique he was using on Song King wasn't hybridization, but grafting. He was providing the theoretical knowledge, while Song King took all the risks with practical application. If Song King succeeded, all the credit would be Ningyan's. Oblivious, Song King celebrated, believing he had stumbled upon a divine book of ancient alchemy. Carrying his new treasures, Ningyan left with a triumphant smile, pleased with his good harvest. He mused that freeloading was the eternal source of human happiness, and planned to visit a brothel the next day. He briefly considered selling the artifacts for silver to humble his aunt, but decided they were too useful to part with. As he walked up the stairs, he began to sing a triumphant song about being a champion under heaven. His celebration was cut short as he sensed movement on the stairs above. 3 imposing figures in dark blue robes were descending. As they passed, Ningyan noticed fresh bloodstains on the floor where they walked. A tense, silent moment passed between Ningyan and the man in the lead. The two exchanged a sharp, knowing glance before the men continued on their way. Once they were gone, Ningyan let out a sigh of relief, admitting to himself that the trio was far from simple. He then resumed his ascent, singing a new, defiant poem about breaking the bonds of heaven and earth. At the top of the tower, the leader of the men, Lord Y, was now sharing tea with Song King and Chu Keiwei. Lord Y, the leader of the night watchmen, mentioned meeting an interesting young man on his way up. Song King casually dismissed Ningyan as an insignificant commoner, though he admitted he was quite interesting. The night watchmen were a feared intelligence organization, operating outside the normal ministry system and answering only to the imperial family. They were known for being ruthless, and it was said that if you did nothing wrong, you had nothing to fear from them at night. Lord Y pressed the point, asking how exactly the young man was interesting. After a moment of serious consideration, Song King declared that Zhu Ningyan was a genius of alchemy. He added that if Ningyan hadn't chosen the wrong path of cultivation, his name would be recorded in the history books. Lord Y sipped his tea, intrigued by the mention of a genius. Back at the Zhu residence, a servant was talking to Ningyan's aunt. The servant mentioned seeing Ningyan still wearing his autumn clothes and suggested they make him a winter coat. The aunt flew into a rage, refusing instantly. She furiously complained that the little bastard took every opportunity to anger her, only came home to eat without contributing money, and still expected them to make clothes for him. She ranted about his ungratefulness, saying the old saying about a wolf traveling 1,000 miles for meat was absolutely true. Just as her anger peaked, an old servant burst into the room, gasping for breath. With a look of pure terror, he announced that something terrible had happened. A woman rushes into the courtyard, frantically calling out for a child named Lingyan. Inside, her husband, Zhu Qian's second uncle, stands beside Qian, who is calmly holding the sleeping little girl. He reassures the panicked mother that Lingyan is perfectly fine, just asleep. The woman, Qian's aunt, is still shaken, wondering how a simple trip out could have gone so wrong. Her husband confirms that Zhu Qian is safe and has been released from the Ministry of Justice. The aunt reluctantly admits that without Qian, her daughters Lingyu and Lingyan would have been in grave danger. The second uncle defends his nephew, explaining that while Qian is stubborn, he's a good person who cares deeply for his family. He then turns on his wife, reminding her of how she constantly berates Qian for spending money on martial arts training and for always arguing with her. He pointedly asks if she's ever stopped to consider what life has been like for Qian, living under someone else's roof for 20 years, and whether he has feelings of his own. Their daughter, Lingyu, tearfully remembers how Qian fought to defend her honor and vows to spend her life repaying his kindness. The second uncle presses his wife further, asking if she would feel no heartache at all if Qian never came back. Speechless, she can only let a single tear fall. Their son, the scholar Zhu Sijiu, observes his mother's reaction, concluding that despite her harsh words, she cares deeply for Qian, having raised him for nearly 2 decades. The second uncle then scoffs at his own son, declaring that if Sijiu had been there, he would have been carried off and bullied right alongside his little sister. Later, the aunt tends to the sleeping Lingyan, who is dreaming of chicken legs. In a quiet moment of affection, she instructs a servant to make a new winter garment for Qian, even if it means cutting back on clothes for her own husband and son. When the servant asks if she's had a change of heart, the aunt defensively snaps back, asking if she looks like a mean person, though the servant's terrified expression says otherwise. Meanwhile, Zhu Qian sits at his desk, preparing to resume writing in his diary. He dramatically announces his decision to abandon the quiet life of a rich person in pursuit of true power. His first idea is to switch his cultivation to the Confucian path by impressing influential scholars with his poetry. The downside, he muses, is that it would feel like being back in high school, and at 20 years old, it's a bit late to change paths. His second idea is to seduce a woman named Kei from the Bureau of Astronomy, hoping to use her connections to live a comfortable life. The downside to this plan is that he would have to give up his lifestyle of frequenting brothels and having many partners, a sacrifice he deems far too great. His third idea involves selling a magical artifact to fund his breakthrough into the Kai refining realm. However, even with that power, he knows he still wouldn't be able to defeat the formidable Vice Minister of Revenue, concluding that progressing in martial arts is nearly impossible without a powerful backer. He decides his best option is to leverage his current connections with the Bureau of Astronomy and Yunlu Academy. A nagging feeling tells him the scandal surrounding the tax silver is far from over. The next day, he finds little Lingyan in the courtyard, furiously practicing martial arts stances. She declares she's training and aggressively challenges him to a duel. Qian realizes the previous day's kidnapping has inspired her to learn how to fight. The little girl, barely understanding the concept, talks about the importance of dignity and demands a duel. Amused, Qian easily stops her attack and offers a simple bribe, a chicken leg if she loses. Lingyan immediately abandons all pretense of a fight and happily accepts the food. When he asks what happened to her dignity, she innocently asks what dignity is, causing him to pat her on the head and remark on her promising future. That evening, Qian meets with his second uncle and cousin Sijiu to discuss the day's events. He drops a bombshell. According to his sources at the Heavenly Observation Bureau, the mastermind behind the entire tax silver frame-up was the Vice Minister Zhu. Sijiu immediately connects the dots, realizing the attack on the children was deliberate revenge by the Vice Minister's son, Zhu Lai. Though Sijiu suggests striking first, his father shouts him down, warning him of the danger of offending such a powerful official. Qian agrees with Sijiu, clarifying that their true enemy isn't Zhu Lai, but his father, Vice Minister Zhu Xianping. They not only foiled the Vice Minister's plot, but also gravely injured his son, an unforgivable offense. The second uncle despairs, feeling their family is powerless but puts his faith in their connections. Qian shoots down this naive hope, explaining that their allies won't break the law to save them from another, more cleverly laid trap. When his panicked uncle asks what they should do, Qian cheekily calls himself a simple transmigrator who doesn't know anything. After a moment, he reveals his analysis. The emperor was furious about the stolen silver, yet the officials responsible conveniently committed suicide. This suggests either the vice minister has immense backing, or the emperor is deliberately maintaining a political balance by not acting. The situation is a complex web of factional strife. Kian explains that the upcoming capital inspection changes everything. This mandated event forces accountability, giving the vice minister's enemies the perfect chance to take him down. Sijiu realizes their enemies won't let the matter rest, as it touches upon the core of Confucian statecraft, ritual and propriety. Kian then poses the crucial question: why would the vice minister risk a frame-up so close to the inspection unless he desperately needed money to cover up a massive embezzlement scheme? Their path is clear. They must expose the real reason behind the vice minister's crime. The second uncle eagerly volunteers to investigate, but Kian dismisses the idea as suicidal for a low-ranking guard. Instead, Kian unveils his own strategy to set a tiger upon wolves. They will not be the main force, but rather the final push that topples their enemy. Their target will be the weaker link, Zhu Lai. They will fabricate charges against the sun, handing a weapon to the vice minister's political enemies and letting them do the rest. Kian delegates tasks with newfound authority. Sijiu will use his scholarly connections to gather intelligence on Zhu Lai. The second uncle will use his position in the Imperial Guard to monitor the Zhu manor. Kian himself will focus on finding a path to survival for the entire Zhu family. That night, Kian stays with Sijiu. As they lie in bed, Sijiu complains about Kian's elbow poking him. Sijiu then grows quiet, asking how long it's been since they shared a bed. Kian remembers it was just after Sijiu turned 10, around the time Sijiu started spending a fortune on martial arts and fell out with his mother, causing them to drift apart. Sijiu teases his cousin for the straightforward answer, then wistfully remarks that with them being this close again, his sister Lingyu probably doesn't stand a chance with Kian anymore. While his family's fate hung in the balance, Zhu Ningyan lay in bed with his cousin, Zhu Sijiu, discussing their bleak situation. Ningyan explained that he held no grudge against his resentful auntie, as his uncle's meager salary as an imperial guard was split evenly between himself and Sijiu, leaving little for their own household. They both knew that if their enemy, Vice Minister Zhu, survived the upcoming inspection, the Zhu family would face disaster. Ningyan assured his cousin he had a backup plan. They would flee the capital. Sijiu worried about Ningyan's decade of hard study, but Ningyan, in a fit of scholarly passion, declared that fame and fortune were fleeting clouds before dramatically kicking the blanket off the bed in his sleep. The next morning, their sister Lingyu was stretching by her open window when Ningyan suddenly vaulted past, clad only in his undergarments. He gave her a cheery wave before disappearing, leaving her to let out a horrified shriek. Utterly oblivious, Ningyan jogged on, merely thinking that his little sister had grown up. Inside, Lingyu was mortified, wondering why her brother was in the inner courtyard at all, while her maid tearfully scolded her for her habit of opening the window before she was properly dressed. Ningyan's morning of chaos continued as he found his youngest sister, Lingyan, furiously brushing her own teeth. When she proudly declared that men should be self-reliant, Ningyan decided a proper lesson on gender was too complicated for a child. He instead offered a nonsensical explanation that completely misfired, causing the little girl to run around happily chanting that she was a troublemaker. Hearing the commotion, Ningyan sighed and decided it was best to eat breakfast out for the day. At a small street-side eatery, Ningyan finished a meal large enough for 5 people and called for the check. The elderly owner, intimidated, tried to refuse payment, but Ningyan insisted. He told her he would sit and digest for a while, then fell into deep thought, contemplating the systemic oppression that plagued the common people of the great Feng dynasty. After he departed, the owner muttered about her bad luck before looking down at her hand in shock. There she found a pile of coins, more than enough to cover the meal. In all her years, he was the first customer who had not only paid, but paid extra. Ningyan met up with Sijiu and insisted they trade outfits, declaring his cousins looked better. Now dressed as scholars, they rode towards Qingyun Mountain, the home of the renowned Yunlu Academy. Along the way, Ningyan's curiosity was piqued, and he asked Sijiu about the great sage, the founder of Confucianism. He was stunned to learn the sage had only lived to be 82, a surprisingly short lifespan in a world filled with extraordinary martial power. As they approached the academy, Sijiu reminded him that outsiders were forbidden, but Ningyan simply smiled, confident that success depended on effort. Within the academy walls, 2 elderly scholars were bickering over a game of Go. A third, Chen Tai, lamented the students' dwindling motivation for the upcoming imperial exams, a consequence of the poor career prospects that awaited Yunlu graduates. The scholars agreed they needed a way to reignite the students' passion, concluding that a powerful poem would be far more effective than another lecture. Their hopes were low, however, as the literary arts had been in decline for some time. Just as they bemoaned the absence of a truly skilled poet, a student announced that Zhu Sijiu had arrived. Upon entering, one of the masters, Lai Mubai, proudly told his colleagues that Sijiu's cousin, the author of the now-famous poem about friendship on the road, was his new student. While the others grew excited at the prospect of more brilliant works, Chen Tai remained skeptical, cautioning them that the young man was a martial artist, not a scholar, and his previous poem was likely a fluke. The group was brought back to their senses, agreeing they had strayed by seeking shortcuts to glory. At that moment, Ningyan and Sijiu entered, and after a brief greeting, Ningyan cut straight to the point. He was there to ask for a favor. He laid out his plan to hide the women of the Zhu family at the academy for their safety, before taking action against Vice Minister Zhu. The headmaster immediately refused, citing the strict rule against outsiders staying overnight. Sijiu countered by mentioning the eldest princess's frequent visits, but was told that royalty and nobility were exceptions. Seeing an opportunity, another scholar made a wager. If Ningyan, the famed poet, could compose a poem on the spot that satisfied all three of them, they would grant his request. The topic they chose was learning. Ningyan's mind raced. He knew a famous poem on the subject, but its focus on fame and fortune would be an insult to the struggling Yunlu students and would certainly backfire. Playing the part of a humble martial artist with poor handwriting, he asked Sijiu to write for him. He then recited a new verse. Burning the lamp at the third watch, the rooster crowing at the fifth, it is the time for young men to study. With black hair, you don't know the importance of studying early. With white hair, you'll regret studying late. The scholars were utterly stunned by the simple, yet profound poem. It stirred memories of their own youths, studying by lamplight while hungry and poor. Having settled the matter, one of the masters turned to Sijiu to discuss his future, offering to secure him a position in the capital, and even attempting to poach him as his own student. Ningyan then made a request of his own, asking the Confucian masters if they could help him open his celestial gate to advance his martial arts. They explained that their paths were different, but they could offer knowledge, describing the ancient and perilous methods warriors once used, such as consuming beast spirit cores, a technique with a 1 in 10 survival rate. Ningyan thanked them graciously for the lesson. Meanwhile, the new poem spread like wildfire through the academy, inspiring the students who read it posted on a board. They were deeply moved, wondering which great master had penned such a masterpiece. Elsewhere, the scholars praised Ningyan's unparalleled talent, lamenting that such a poetic genius was committed to the martial path. But the poem on the board bore no signature, a fact that had not gone unnoticed by the duplicitous Lai Mubai. He was found in a secluded corner, copying the poem and preparing to sign his own name to it, only to be caught by a furious colleague who decried him as a shameless old thief. Far away in a quiet pavilion, the dean of the academy, Zhao Shu, looked on with weary eyes, his hair grayed by the constant threads of worry. At the prestigious Cloud Deer Academy, a woman of noble bearing known as Grand Princess Hueking quotes a powerful poem she heard the disciples reciting, asking the dean who the magnificent author could be. This is no ordinary princess. She is a formidable scholar in her own right, having studied the arts of war, governance, and philosophy under the kingdom's greatest masters. Highly learned and widely read, she is a respected intellectual giant. The dean calmly explains that the poem's author is not a scholar, but a minor official from a small county. He laments that the entire Confucian world of the great Feng kingdom has grown stagnant and rigid, lacking the very spirit that poetry thrives on. The princess challenges him, questioning why he refuses to take up an official post when his wisdom is so needed. With a sigh, the dean admits that for over a decade he has tried and failed to forge a new path for Confucianism, unable to overcome the philosophical chasm left by a long-dead sage. The princess insists her father, the emperor, needs the academy's support, hinting at a power struggle with Duke Wai Yuan and the court's nobles. She lays bare the kingdom's troubles, weakening strength, natural disasters, rampant corruption, and endless partisan infighting. The nation is beset by enemies on all sides, from the northern barbarians to the southern tribes, while other powers watch and wait for their chance to strike. She passionately urges the dean to step forward and restore the nation's prestige, but he simply replies that the time has not yet come. Their tense conversation is interrupted by a panicked scholar, who bursts in with terrible news. The academy's three great masters, Lai Mobai, Zhang Shen, and Chen Tai, have erupted into a furious fight, hurling insults at one another. The dean and princess arrive to see the three scholars levitating in the air, locked in a heated argument over who gets to claim a talented disciple. When their argument reaches a stalemate, they decide to settle things with their fists. The masters unleash an astonishing array of powers, borrowing techniques from other schools of thought. Zhang Xin conjures a Gu master's insect, Chen Tai summons a Taoist's golden core, and Lai Mubai paints a beautiful woman into existence using a sorcerer's art. The students below watch in awe, witnessing a battle between sixth-grade Confucian scholars unlike anything they've ever seen. The fight takes a comical turn when one of the scholars points out that Lai Mubai's pants have fallen down in the heat of battle. Enraged and utterly humiliated, Lai Mubai unleashes a curse, declaring that everyone's pants shall fall. As trousers begin to drop across the academy, a booming voice of immense authority echoes through the air, forbidding fighting and flying. The dean has arrived, his presence immediately quelling the chaos and forcing the bickering masters to the ground. They attempt to pass off their brawl as a simple scholarly debate, but a student steps forward to expose their fraud. The truth is revealed. The three masters were fighting over who could claim credit for a brilliant poem written by a young man named Zhu Qian. The princess recognizes the name, realizing this is the same talent who penned another famous work. Declaring it an insult for such a genius to be a mere follower, she asks where he is, only to be told he has gone traveling. Meanwhile, Zhu Qian himself is learning about the history of his own path. His companion tells him the tale of Caiyan Zhang, a second-grade Confucian scholar from 600 years ago who, witnessing the people's suffering under a corrupt dynasty, channeled their collective wrath to shatter the nation's fortune, paving the way for the great Feng kingdom to be founded. Zhu Qian learns that his three bickering teachers are only fourth-grade scholars, while the dean stands at the third grade, the realm of destiny, a level no one has surpassed for 200 years. The scene briefly shifts to Zhu Qian's cousin, Zhu Linyu, who offers his heartfelt thanks. He acknowledges that without Zhu Qian's intervention, their entire family would have been executed or wiped out by their enemies. Back at the academy, Zhu Qian and his companion stand within the sage's palace, before a large stone monument. His companion recounts the origin of the rivalry between the Cloud Deer and Imperial Academies, which began with a power struggle over the imperial succession 200 years prior. That conflict ended when a Cloud Deer scholar named Cheng Hui sided with the emperor and established the Imperial Academy to cultivate talent loyal to the throne, causing a schism in the Confucian school. Zhu Qian cuts to the heart of the matter, identifying it not as a philosophical dispute, but a raw struggle for power. He explains that scholars who seek power inevitably clash with the emperor, calling their ultimate ambition to become an uncrowned emperor, a path that always ends in a purge. The only way to break this cycle, he theorizes, is to become so powerful that one can influence the nation's fortune itself, standing as an equal to imperial authority. He wonders aloud if this is why the Confucian path has been stagnant for 2 centuries. Perhaps advancing requires entering the political arena, or tapping into this very fortune. His gaze falls upon the monument, which bears the words of sage Cheng. His companion explains Cheng's doctrine, preserving the heavenly principle and extinguishing human desires. This philosophy established a rigid set of rules where concepts like loyalty and filial piety were elevated to absolute, unbreakable laws. It is a doctrine where a subject must die if his ruler commands it, and a son must perish if his father wishes it, a notion Zhu Qian openly scoffs at. When asked if this doctrine is right or wrong, Zhu Qian dismisses it as a fettering of thought. His companion reveals that the dean and generations of scholars at the Cloud Deer Academy have tried to refute this philosophy by writing on a blank monument set up beside Cheng's, but all have failed. Any words they inscribe vanish by the next day. The companion then poses a critical question to Zhu Qian. What is more important, the king or the common people? Without hesitation, Zhu Qian answers that the common people are. He then turns the doctrine on its head, challenging its core tenets and questioning by what right a ruler or father can demand such a sacrifice. Declaring that he is no scholar but wishes to write something nonetheless, Zhu Qian asks his companion to prepare the ink. This time, he will write the answer himself. As Zhu Qian contemplates the state of the world, he reflects on the deep-seated corruption within the Feng kingdom, where officials are like beasts in human clothing and the common folk live in misery, like stray dogs. The existence of supernatural powers has only worsened this feudal system, stripping the people of even the courage to rebel. In a flash of profound insight, Zhu Qian formulates a new, powerful ideal for all scholars. He declares their purpose is to establish a heart for heaven and earth, a destiny for the people, to revive the lost teachings of past sages, and to open a path of great peace for all future generations. With these revolutionary words, he inscribes them onto the stone monument in the sage palace. The moment the words are written, a tremendous purple aura erupts from the monument, which begins to crack under the strain. The energy builds until it explodes outward in a blinding flash, shattering the ancient stone and sending a shockwave across the entire academy. Zhu Qian's two companions, terrified by the commotion they've caused, beat a hasty retreat, frantically insisting they were never there to begin with. Elsewhere, Zhu Qian discusses the event with his eldest brother, Zikyu. While Zhu Qian is proud of his accomplishment, Zikyu gravely warns him of the consequences. This act has solved a problem for the Cloud Deer Academy, but it has also earned them the enmity of the powerful Imperial Academy, whose graduates fill the Imperial Court. This new conflict, he explains, is 100 times more dangerous than the silver tax case, and advises they leave immediately and quietly to avoid further trouble. Drawn by the pure aura, the dean and teachers of the Cloud Deer Academy rush to the sage's palace, finding the monument shattered. The dean, however, is not distressed. He realizes that the seal suppressing the Academy's fortune has been shaken. Reading the magnificent words left behind, he is overcome with emotion, declaring it a profound enlightenment and vowing to keep the author's identity a secret. Dismissing the others, he is left alone to contemplate the meaning of the scholar's creed. The event does not go unnoticed. The Grand Princess is swiftly informed of the celestial phenomenon at the Academy. She orders her subordinate to inform Duke Y and to launch a full investigation. As he leaves, she gives him one more, very specific target, a constable from the Changle County Yemen named Zhu Qian. The story shifts to Dihuang Mountain, where Zhu Qian and his team of night watchers are hunting a demon. They discover a massive footprint and decide to use gunpowder, a state-controlled substance, to lure the creature downstream. The team discusses the rarity of gunpowder and laments the absence of a spellcaster from the Sichuan Observatory, whose powers would make their job much easier. Following a lead from the local village chief, they investigate a nearby limestone mine. There they find a strange kiln, dug far too deep and lacking any burn marks, suggesting it was used for something else entirely. Inside, Zhu Qian discovers traces of a different mineral being mined. He quickly identifies it as saltpeter, the main ingredient for gunpowder. The discovery is monumental. An illegal saltpeter mining operation is a grave offense against the court. They realize this must be what the demon was protecting. As they prepare to report their findings, they are suddenly ambushed. A massive, lizard-like demon erupts from the ground with devastating force, its power far beyond what they anticipated. Zhu Qian is sent flying by the initial blast, but manages to recover just in time to dodge the creature's massive, scale-covered tongue. He recognizes the creature is at the core refinement realm, a truly formidable foe. He quickly organizes his team, ordering them to aim for its weak spots while he prepares to distract it. The team's coordinated attack, however, fails completely. Zhu Qian understands why. An expert at the core refinement realm possesses perception so keen that a simple ambush is impossible to pull off. Enraged, the demon counterattacks, catching Zhu Qian in a brutal blow. He is thrown to the ground, critically injured but miraculously alive. He survived only thanks to the heart-protecting mirror given to him by Song Zheng. Seeing his chance, Zhu Qian pulls out a vial of potent poison and instructs his team to coat their blades. They launch another volley, and this time, the poisoned weapons find their mark. The demon lets out a piercing shriek of agony. With the beast finally weakened, the team presses their advantage, launching a furious assault. The grievously wounded creature, realizing it's outmatched, turns and flees towards a nearby river. The team gives chase, desperate to finish it off before it escapes into the water. Just as the demon is about to leap to safety, a shimmering ribbon of light shoots through the air, magically ensnaring the beast and stopping it in its tracks. Zhu Qian stares in disbelief, recognizing the object as a rare artifact from the Sichuan Observatory. It seems there are other, more powerful forces at play in this investigation. With a brilliant surge of energy, Zhu Qian unleashes a devastating attack, felling his monstrous opponent with a decisive strike. The massive reptilian demon sinks beneath the water, its lifeless body a testament to Qian's victory. The colossal carcass of the beast lies still, as the party surveys their handiwork. Captain Yochung is deeply impressed, telling Kian that she saw him predict the exact spot the demon would fall and aim his attack with precision. She praises his incredible observation and judgment, adding that he is surprisingly humble. Kian simply grins, brushing off the compliment by attributing his skill to sheer luck. Suddenly, an elderly village chief storms up to them, angrily accusing Kian and his group of harming the villagers. After calming him, Kian begins his inquiry, asking about the mining operations in a southern cave. The chief evasively explains that the area was once a kiln, giving a roundabout answer that it was a path people used to pass through, though not often. On their way back, Song Tingfeng playfully teases Kian, revealing that Captain Yocheng has been praising him non-stop and seems to have taken a liking to him. The subject of their conversation, Captain Yocheng, is a famously single and well-respected officer in Jing's 6th Division. Kian deflects the teasing, suggesting Tingfeng try his own luck if he's so interested. Tingfeng then shifts the topic, asking about the powerful blade technique Kian used in the fight. Kian identifies it as the whistling wind sword technique. His comrade is puzzled, pointing out they wield sabers, not swords, but Kian counters that a weapon's name shouldn't limit its function. Their banter is cut short when a group of villagers rushes to intercept them, begging them to wait. The chief explains that for half a year they have barely managed to survive under the demon's threat. He tearfully thanks Kian, saying that without his intervention, they would have been unable to pay their taxes and would have been forced to become wanderers. As a token of their gratitude, the village presents him with a basket full of eggs, which they admit is nearly everything they have. Moved by their sincerity, Kian accepts the humble gift. As he walks away, he reflects that rejecting their offering would have only caused them fear. Back at headquarters, Kian is commended by his superior for achieving great merit on the mission. The debriefing quickly gets down to business. They discuss Kian's observation that the demons seem to have a specific purpose for attacking the miners, which connects to the saltpeter they discovered. One of the officers theorizes that the demon was trying to monopolize the saltpeter mine, but questions why a demon would need such a substance. The red-haired superior provides the chilling answer. Saltpeter has one primary use beyond rare medicinal applications: to create gunpowder. The horrifying realization dawns on them all. The demon clan is attempting to manufacture explosives. After filing a report for injuries sustained on the mission, Kian manages to secure 2 days of paid leave. His colleague Tingfeng is ecstatic and immediately suggests they go to the courtesan house to celebrate. Kian complains that he'd rather go home and rest, but knows his family would only nag him for being idle. They arrive at the Gulan, where Tingfeng is shocked that Kian has led them to the pavilion of the highly sought-after Lady Fuxiang. Tingfeng protests, reminding Kian that her exclusive tea gathering costs a steep 10 taels, and there's no chance she would choose common watchmen like them. Brushing off his friend's concerns, Kian coolly declares that he will pay the fee.